Yeah, so perfect example. For those of you who have not watched The Boys on Amazon Prime, you should. It's an amazing
Mm.
show. If you're under 18 watching this channel, the show's not for you. But if
No.
you are 18, go watch it. But in the very first episode, when A Train runs through Robin, right, she explodes. Like
Right.
just completely That's what would have happened to that guy. Essentially, right?
Okay.
Added to
Yeah.
the fact that then he got sent through a brick wall, because I mean he takes him through the brick wall, right? There would have been nothing left of him to go through said brick wall, and then by the time he got out, so I mean that guy's dead, regardless of however you want to play it. He's
Right.
dead. He's not living anymore. So Superman did kill that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this happens in kind of in the video game realm too. It's like, you're doing I find it funny because like I like the Superman, the Spider-Man games, the newer Spider, the remake. And the Spider-Man 2 kind of does in the same realm where you're doing these combos and it's like, oh no, swung him around and smashed his head in the ground. And he's just like, that's fine. He's okay. He's living, or you'll swing a guy off a rooftop and he just goes flying off into the distance.
And my thing is, those speeds, and we even with Superman, let's say he grabbed his body, right, or even like with Spider-Man and swinging somebody, the sheer force of the body moving without the head being pushed first, his neck would be instantly broken. Same thing with
Yeah.
Spider-Man. You go to swing somebody at that speed, it's going to just snap their freaking neck. They're going to be
There's
dead by the
no
time you get
muscles.
one revolution around, right?
Yeah, you talk about even, you're talking about the muscles, like, because again, like when you're doing training in piloting, specifically high Air Force piloting, right? Like you go through training where uh to be accustomed to G forces, right? You have to strengthen your muscles and know which muscles to tighten so your blood doesn't freaking rush out of your head and make you pass out. You're right, like this constant, or not constant, but the sudden movement of your body going one direction or another. Your muscles aren't tensed here to prepare for that type. Even if you were, like, let's just say I'm stiffening my neck up because I know I'm going to get flung. I still don't know if your muscles will be strong enough to keep your neck from just snapping off from the sheer G forces.
Well, so and you talk about pilots. They actually wear G suits, right? They wear suits designed to help mitigate the G forces through fast acceleration, especially in high turns and maneuvers. But we experience it for us normies who don't get to fly planes or don't have superpowers.
Yeah.
And you think about an auto accident at 55 mile an hour, you get whiplash. Why? Because it's that sudden jerkiness of your head jerking forward and then getting snapped back. Even you hit the airbag, break your nose, and then you hit the back of that. Hitting the back of the headrest isn't what gives you the whiplash. It's that sudden snap of your neck that didn't actually hit anything yet.
Right.
And that's the snap. That's whiplash just at 50 mile an hour. Fuck hell, you can get it at 30 mile an hour. You hit something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That shows you how sensitive this thing is that holds the nerve center of our body, that controls everything else is.
It's a little stiff. What a remarkably fragile structure to support such a valuable payload. It's not unlike balancing a Fabergé egg on a pixie stick.
And you got somebody trying to move you. Now, when you watch the Flash TV show, he does a good job of when they go to move people, he grabs, and actually in X-Men Apocalypse, when Quicksilver is going in there after the house explodes and he's trying to get everybody, if you notice, he places the hand on the back of their neck, right at the base of where their head hits their neck. So when he moves them, it's keeping them from their neck snapping back.
But kudos. Kudos to them. Yeah,
it wouldn't work at that speed he's moving, but kudos to them. They made it look better, though.
No, but it's one of those. It's like, oh yeah, they kind of thought of that. Okay, I'll give them a pat. It's like, meh. I mean, yeah, totally get that, and we appreciate that. Like watching shows and watching movies, it's not necessarily has to be exactly correct, but it could be plausible, right? Like eating the candy bars and then just to keep him satiated, like those types of things. I think they're a nod to the people like us that are like, I don't want to say skeptics or devil advocates, but that's kind of what I see in some of them. I'm just like, that wouldn't happen. You could like, but when a director or a writer puts something like that in there, like, at least that's a nod to me, right? Like they're trying to they're nodding to me, like, we know this isn't totally viable, but here you go, here's something, you know what I mean?
He's a nerd like us. He was thinking about it,
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
So in Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman, if you watched when Mantis and I discussed about our favorite TV shows and movies, that was my favorite TV show. They play it as Superman has this aura that's a few millimeters off his body, so anything that's actually touching him is basically protected by this aura, which allows him to move at said speed of light. Also allows his suit to be, which is kind of bullshit because in the earlier episodes it does get shot and holes in it, but in the later ones you even see it heal, which I'm like, all right, well, you didn't do a good job explaining that. I'll give you a pass because it's Superman, but they explain that there's this little aura around him, so anything he's touching that's how he's able to transport Lois and other people at super speeds. Because I'm like, she'd be fucking dead. You wouldn't even have a skeleton by the time you landed again. Kind of like in the original Superman when he goes flying with Lois and he's got her held out by the arm. Like,
oh yeah,
the speed you're moving at, dude, wind would have taken her back. I mean, hell, everybody when you stick your hand outside the car doing 55 mile an hour, it's pushing your hand back. He's flying at at least 100 mile an hour, because I mean they're going around what's supposed to be Metropolis, even though they have a Statue of Liberty. But he's flying around Metropolis there. I'm like, yeah, dude, she would have just holding on by a fingertip, she'd have been gone.
Yeah,
which technically she
totally.
does end up falling, but
she does. That'll see. Yeah, that scene's. We'll just chalk that up to be an early film days of not having the writing slash budget to do cooler special effects. So it is what it is.
But I think that's what drew me so much to the Stargate, the Star Trek realm, and all of that, because it has that element of science. It also has that element of fantasy, like superheroes do. But it has that element of realism, like where they explain how they're able to do this, like traveling through hyperspace. They don't explain how they managed to get that damn ship when they get the original the Prometheus. They're like, it travels at 110,000 miles a second, which is over half the speed of light. Right? They don't really explain. Now, again, the time dilation element, you'd only be out of contact for a few seconds. Depending on how long the trip was, maybe a couple of seconds, there would be a difference. But I'm like, over half the speed of light. Because I mean, for those who don't know, I mean, the speed of light's 186,000 miles a second. Is what the speed of light travels at. Now, again, nothing other than light, because it's made up of photons which have no mass, can travel the speed of light.
Can do that.
We know.
Right.
So
yeah, there's other cool stuff. I mean, taken into Stargate, they kind of delve into energy, and how that is used, at least in that universe, where these gates. I don't know if you're familiar. If anyone who's watching is not familiar with Stargate, it's such a great series. But they do talk about what they discover are called 0 point modules that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cal, I'm pretty sure it is it's like energy from subspace that they have harnessed in this. It looks like a little, I don't know, like a crystal thing.
That was a waste of a perfectly good explanation.
That the ancients created or whatever. But it powers all, like in the show, it's like almost infinite energy that powers all of their city, everything, wormholes, their ships, like everything.
So it's artificially created region of subspace. So it's actually artificial subspace that they create. That's their Duracell battery. And while it always says that it's like Mantis just said, this infinite energy, and it's the greatest power that anybody knows about. They seem to run out of them like that.
They do. Like, they seem to go empty forever. I don't know.
Right? Yeah. They constantly drain the power from these infinite power sources and have to try to go get new ones. It's entertaining, but yes, and they had looked at, and that's one of the things we talked about, 0 point energy. in space, just in empty space, there is energy, and the amount of energy per like cubic foot of space is actually astronomical. It's just there's no way to harness it without
Mhm.
destroying everything in the universe,
Right.
potentially tearing a hole in the fabric of space time itself, which is what happens in Stargate. Hence why the ancients in that show did it from an artificially contained region of subspace. So could that ever happen? No, they had been looking. The last I read on it was they were looking at something about trying to harness 0 point energy, but in our own space time. Because
Mhm.
the calculations on it were astronomical. Again, I can't do that kind of math. There's probably
See, this
12
brings up
people on the planet that can.
another question. Like, what is the dangers of this type of stuff? Because it's like one wrong calculation, and you could destroy a whole solar system. I think that actually happened in Atlantis. Isn't that what he did? He blew up a
No,
whole.
no, it was 3/4 of a solar system. Okay, it wasn't the whole solar system. It was 3/4 of the solar system.
Destroyed 3/4 of a solar system.
And it's
Yeah, it
uninhabited,
just
as he points out.
true,
Which actually was
true.
uninhabited because the same device that
Killed
destroyed
everything.
3/4 of it killed everything anyways. But
Yeah, right. It's like we're always trying to find, nowadays it's kind of like electric vehicles. We're trying to harness is it fission or fusion, because I get these mixed up.
fusion.
Okay, so we currently do fission, right?
Yeah, you have
That's
fissionable
what
material.
current we
Nuclear
have,
material is
nuclear.
fissionable. Yeah, like so you have
Yeah,
that. You
so
have a
they're
fission
trying.
reaction.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, was it earlier this year or late sometime last year, that they had thought that they had found a breakthrough to make it with hydrogen, to where we could do it with just hydrogen molecules, and it'd be at least on Earth, it would be enough energy clean, and it's clean. It's pretty clean. There's no depleted plutonium, that type of waste that you have to bury for millions of years deep in the earth, encased in clay, or whatever the hell they do with it. Uh, you know, there's minimal waste and unlimited energy as efficiently that we would ever use. That I know there was a mild breakthrough on it, and they thought that they may have been able to figure out a way to make it usable in the sense that we would need it in, right? Because there's a lot of these technologies and theories and stuff that may be true. However, they're not either replicatable, or they're not in the proportions that we would need to harness or use those types of technologies, right?
Well, now we don't on this channel. We try not to. We don't talk about conspiracy theories a lot. We do mention woke things a lot, but we try not to go into conspiracy theories and all this. But there are the rumors out there that yes, they can make this scalable. However, since your power companies, your
Yeah.
fossil fuels, your oil manufacturers, things like that. I mean, those are your wealthiest people on the planet. They're going to keep this technology from coming to light, right? Because then they lose billions and trillions of dollars. I don't know if
Right.
that's true. We're not even going to get into it. That's not what we discuss on. But yes, the current problem that sorry for using air quotes, but that we face is there's no way to make it scalable and safe, right? Because of
Mhm.
if you're having a fusion reaction, and for those like the easiest way to explain it, and we'll tie it back to superheroes. If you ever watched Spider-Man 2, the original one with Tobey Maguire, right? So that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to like create fusion, and he has that big containment field, and he has the arms as particles try to escape said containment field that are pushing it back down. Now, far-fetched, and I know there are probably going to be some people. I don't think we have any scientists that necessarily watch the show, but there are going to be the people that
No.
want to go to Google and try to say I'm dumb, whatever. Again, I told you, I gave you the disclaimer from the beginning. I'm not an expert on this field. However, the idea behind that, and he even mentions it in the show, is basically it's a harmonic resonance field. Now that is a real thing, right? So harmonic resonance is basically you find a frequency. Everything in the world, apparent or in the universe, vibrates at its own frequency, and
Yeah.
they've done it with glass. That if you could match the frequency of that glass and amplify it, that pitch, that you could shatter the glass. Well, the same thing goes for these particles that come out of, like, when you're doing fusion, right? The idea is you have a harmonic resonance field that is an invisible field, almost basically a force field, but it's keeping whatever in, because it's resonating
Vibrating at the same.
frequency that keeps that particle from. Now, as it tries to burst out, that's where you have the big hands coming in because of the fusion. And similar problem, supposedly, again, I don't know how much of this is true. I'm not an expert in the field, is trying to scale up fusion reactions, because they can do microscopic fusion reactions, right? But trying to scale that up and make it safe is where I guess you run into the problem.
That's where I get worried too. Like, again, all it takes is, like, I know people were talking about when they were running the particle collider, right? It's like, oh, you're going to create a black hole, and then we're all going to get sucked in it, right? Or some crazy shit, right? Like,
did not happen when they powered on the LHC.
yeah,
Large Hadron Collider, for those who don't know.
Yeah, it's just, it worries me that you know, can we have like our own subset of subspace to try some of this shit in, so it won't kill everyone?
Is there another?
That's what I want. Is there a sandbox we can use?
They do that in Atlantis. Remember, they went into a alternate universe to start the bridge, so that way they were just going to destroy ours, and then it ended up trying to destroy theirs. So then they had to come back,
right?
So.
That kind of ties in with the multiverse type theories as well, of and you get into time travel and you know, is that a thing? Is it possible to time travel, or is and this is all theory stuff here too, like, right? You know, you talked about theoretically time travel is possible, right? Theoretically.
So theoretically, they say you could potentially, I believe, go forward in time, but not backwards in time.
Okay.
Which is kind of odd if you think that time slows down as you hit the speed of light. If you could go faster, the way like Flash and actually in Justice League, the Zack Snyder cut is he goes faster than light, and he actually reverses time. For those of you who remember the original Superman movie, when Lois dies, he spins the Earth backwards, and it reverses time. That would have just killed all of us, but, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But theoretically, going back in time, you have causality, you have the Lorentz invariance theory, you have all these different things that prevent the ability to go back in time.
Backwards.
Versus being able to go forward in time. Again, I don't know how much of that's true. That could be completely flip-flop, because, you know, you read certain articles and then you read certain theoretical papers and all of this, and it's kind of like, you know, people publish something new all the time that can say something different. But, you know, causality, you know, if you can go back in time, then, you know, causality kind of goes out the window, right? Because similar to, if you ever watched the movie Arrival, like the new one with Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner, they do a great job explaining nonlinear time. And it's kind of one of those that if nonlinear time actually existed, then causality basically goes out the window, because you would be able to, nonlinear time, there is no time, like there's no beginning, middle, and end. Everything just is. So,
right.
If you could see the end, and you know this is going to happen, but you can't do anything to change it, then there's no cause and effect, right? You had no control over it. It was always going to happen.
Right. That's the set in stone timeline. We're just kind of along for the ride type of thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of the difference in when we talk about the superhero movies, right? So, like with Flash and Flashpoint, they didn't go into that, and they didn't explain that. What they did is you went back in time and changed something, and you created an alternate timeline, right? We talk about the multiverse, you know, the many worlds theory. This is what they did. They skewed off.
This is back
in alternate timeline.
This is the Back to the Future movie, basically, is what's happening here.
And Hot Tub Time Machine. Don't forget about Hot Tub Time Machine.
True.
But yes, it is the Back to the Future thing, and it's funny and it's ironic bringing it full circle back to superhero movies. When in Avengers Endgame, they're talking about like Paul Rudd. I love the scene where he goes, as long as we follow the rules of time travel, no betting on sporting events. We don't interact with our past selves. And Tony Stark's
right.
are you really basing this whole thing of time travel on Back to the Future? That's not right at all.
Art means no talking to our past. Cells, no betting on sporting events.
I'm going to stop you right there, Scott. Are you seriously telling me that your plan to save the universe is based on Back to the Future?
And the Hulk, Bruce Banner, Mark Ruffalo's guy, he tries to explain it that, if you go back in time, that present becomes your new future. He's like, and that present is your past, and it confused a lot of people. That's the thing is, it's not like you just go back in time. And if you ever watch the movie Time Machine, it does a great job. It's a wonderful movie. Absolutely love that movie. But it does a great job explaining that because he keeps trying to go back into the past to save his would-be fiance. She dies right after they get together. So let's just call it his fiance. And he can't understand why he can't go in and save her. And it does a great job explaining why and causality, right? And that's the whole point, the cause and effect. If you prevent this cause, then there's going to be a different cause and effect.
Else.
Like you can't stop it. It's
Change
like
it.
Final Destination, right? If you fuck with the plan, it's going to happen just in a different way.
Different way, right? Yeah, it's interesting that that comic books and in movie and superhero movies in general tend to flirt with a lot of these ideas in the science fiction realm, like a lot of times. Like again, the multiverse theory, that type of stuff is kind of akin to what you're talking about of going back and changing certain things, or there are multiverses all happening at the exact same time. We just make different choices in each one of those, right? I think it's interesting that the comic books and superhero movies tend to gravitate towards these types of topics.
Well, because again, I think it kind of brings it to an element of realism. Again, you're kind of grounding these otherworldly type of characters, right? And it kind of grounds it, and it brings the science element. And it's weird. I will say Marvel, I feel like, does a better job than DC. They bring a religious element with the one above all and all of this as the creator, but then they lean into the scientific Big Bang element of it. So they do a great job, and we mentioned that in an earlier video, of kind of melding the two. And I think it helps it make it appeal to more of a broader audience, right? So you have your scientific nuts, the nerds like us that are like, oh, hey, this actually makes sense and you could do this. But then you have the religious people like, hey, yeah, it shows there was a creator. And again, I think it kind of brings it to a more humanized element, right? It makes it a little more palatable.
Yeah.